Who doesn't love a good fighting manga, am I right? Over the last year or so, I've done different manga recommendation videos where I sort of take a random assortment of things that I'm reading in the moment, and that's what's there for that video. But I decided it'd be kind of interesting if instead I started doing this by genre, sort of including series that are a little more well-known with lesser-known series, in the goal that, well, hopefully somebody out there hasn't read some of these and will therefore read them. As I said, there will be some titles in here that for sure some of you have definitely read, but it's very well possible that there's some people out there who just haven't yet. There are also some series that I would love to talk about, but I just haven't read them yet, so I brought along a buddy with me this time. But without further ado, let's get into the first recommendation, which is Holy Land, a completed manga at 182 chapters written by Koji Mori. This series focuses more on MMA and street fighting, therefore the series isn't really super over the top or as flashy as some of the other manga that's going to be on this list, but nonetheless the fights are still really engaging because of the characters, and more specifically, the main character of the story, Yu Kamishiro. Throughout the story, you see this character grow and develop in many different aspects through the fighting and the life of street fighting specifically. It's a story that has a lot of good characters surrounding him as well, with their dynamics and sort of living this dangerous lifestyle when they go out into the night. But I do believe that it's this aspect of self-discovery and weakness and strength that we see with Yu's character that sort of leaves a grander impact than I think a lot of other fighting series might have beyond just, oh, this was cool fights. Now, you could take a lot out of a series just beyond cool fights per se, but I really do think Holy Land sort of is in this rare category that I'm totally making up of touching the human soul. This one will have you shadowboxing in your room for reasons far beyond just wanting to fight. I promise you, it has that effect on people. A story of a frail, weak boy in the darkness who turns into a man and becomes the legendary thug hunter. I meant to say hunter. Thug hunter.
Majou Taisen is a tournament manga, but this time the fighters are only female. That probably got some of your attention. Specifically, they're labelled as witches who are fighting for the chance of getting any wish they desire granted. We currently have over 20 chapters released, with it being an ongoing monthly series, having various characters from real world history and mythology that were rulers, serial killers and warriors as an example, featuring unique abilities with the use of magic and weapons as the fighting format.
One of the struggles when reading a fighting series sometimes can be the predictability of it. At a certain point, it becomes easy to tell who's going to win and who isn't going to win based on how the narrative has been shaping up. But if there's one story that I think really maintained a great unpredictability from beginning to end, would be Kengan Ashura. Now, Kengan Ashura is around 240 chapters, however there is a sequel series, Kengan Omega, which I won't really get into, although it's almost at 200 chapters, just because that second part has some major spoilers regarding the ending of Kengan Ashura. I will say I'm a little split on Kengan Omega considering how satisfying I found the ending of Kengan Ashura to be, but nonetheless it is what it is. The story consists of our main character, Oma, who's basically being represented by a company and therefore enters this tournament to win. Typical tournament sort of setting, but what really makes this manga extremely memorable is the large cast of characters and fighters and how they're each all super memorable in their own way. Even though you have typical big buff men, each of them have such distinctive personalities that they're each worth remembering in their own way, and their fighting styles only help make it even more unique with each fight. Whether it's a menace like Ryan Kure or a very sus male Yandere and Setsuna, and even the main character Oma, each provide all these different dynamics with each fight that ends up happening throughout the series, and again, an extremely satisfying ending. On top of the artwork and just amazing fights period as should be expected from a fighting series, I think this is one of the premier fighting manga anybody should read.
Tokyo Duel, as expected in the fighting manga genre, is fully just a tournament, with weapons and martial arts being the fighting method. I find that with this series, one of its strongest aspects is character designs. Just looking at them makes you want to read it if I'm being honest. Going into the fights, you won't really have any idea what to expect. Some of the weapons used seem to be quite random, techniques are wild and simply very wacky. The manga does feature an underlying purpose of its story, basically keeping one's town safe from being destroyed, as the setting of the manga is after the devastation of World War II. This also brings in further stakes and emotion into the fights, which is a plus. It's currently still ongoing, with over 65 chapters released at today's recording. There has been quite a few fights, but there's still plenty more to expect.
Now, I could talk about Record of Ragnarok in this video, but I feel like this is a series that I've already talked about on many occasions, so instead I'll talk about one that's sort of like it, but instead of all of these gods from different mythologies, instead this is a fighting tournament series surrounding Japanese folklore, myths, and legends. Tenkaichi Nihon Saiki Kei Budokai Kittensen. Don't look up how it's actually pronounced, just take my word for it. Some of the other series on this list have amazing artwork such as Kengan Ashura and Baki, but I think if I were to pick one out of all of them that has my favorite artwork, it would have to be this one. The tournament starts out because the head who's in charge just wants to see a ton of bloodshed, so all the best fighters from Japan are all put together into this tournament. People such as Honda, Sasaki Kojiro, and Musashi Miyamoto, who in this manga just looks like a buff version of Osamu Dazai from Bungo Stray Dogs, and I'm about to Chris Benoit whoever just passed my house on a motorbike. I think it's easy to see where the inspirations come from with this series, but nonetheless, the fights are extremely engaging and the characters are fun to see, and again, the artwork is absolutely top tier. It's only 24 chapters, so I would highly recommend catching up on this one as soon as possible.
Garuden is simply underrated, underappreciated, and what I would consider a must-read fighting manga. Sitting at 238 chapters, with amazing art done by the creator of Baki, Itagaki, in 1996, it's one of the series' most grounded in martial arts, with a wide range of styles and fighting situations. For example, you have street fights with characters always pulling up to throw hands, simple but very effective tournaments, hype training moments, and honestly just an overwhelming amount of fights in those 200 chapters. Hopefully that sounds perfect for you like it did for me.
This technically falls under the genre of sports manga as well, but it's boxing, so it's going to fall under fighting. And no, I'm not going to talk about Hajime no Ippo. I do plan on reading that series later on in the year and giving a dedicated video to that. But here I want to talk about Ashita no Jo. At around 20 volumes, this is a much older series, but yet extremely ahead of its time. We follow the main character Joe Ibuki and watching him rise up the ranks in the boxing world with a very unique style of fighting in comparison to all of these different pro boxers. Originally starting off in prison, you see his dynamic develop with his rival Rikishi, who we see grow and grow and grow as again both of them rise through the ranks. I had mentioned that with Kengan Ashura it had an extremely satisfying ending, and then with Holy Land it has one of my favorite main characters ever, and Ashita no Jo has both, because it's more than just seeing Joe's successes and seeing him come from pretty much nothing. It's also his flaws that remain permanent throughout the entire story, and the low points we see with his character as well. Admittedly, it did take me a reread and putting aside people's expectations of the series that I was given to really enjoy the series for what it was. Along with Holy Land, this is one of those series that I think anybody would regret not reading.
Baki as a fighting manga has everything, but in its own unique way. There's a reason it's a series spanning multiple manga, with over 1,000 total chapters. Technically, the premise is Baki getting stronger to eventually fight his father, Yujiro Hanma, but through this, we see him fall in love with fighting, with many characters getting their fair chance to shine throughout the story. Providing really everything you could want, we have Baki's childhood flashback arc for the emotion, 3 tournaments because we always need that, amazing build up for the climactic father-son fight, that some consider the greatest in all of manga, and most importantly, some of the most wacky stuff in a series you may just think is some martial arts fighting manga. Something very important that many don't seem to know is that yes, the manga is still ongoing, not on a specific schedule, but we get at least 1 chapter a month and sometimes more. There's also a few side story manga that are ongoing at this time as well. Also, yes, the art is amazing, fight me.
If you want me to continue to recommend stories like this by genre, let me know by leaving a like and a comment down below, as well as let me know any guests that you would like me to do this sort of video with. Massive thank you to Mysterious Weeb for helping me out with this video. If you love fighting series, make sure you go check out his channel, link will be in the description below. Subscribe to him, show him some support, like this is his thing. And as always, this has been The Masked Man. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.